I never thought I would be the kind of woman who walked into a hospital with trembling hands and a breaking heart, ready to face the woman who had stolen my husband. But that day, I wasn't the same woman I used to be. I wasn't the gentle, forgiving wife who believed every excuse, every business trip, every late night message. I was tired, tired of pretending not to notice, tired of waking up to a stranger beside me. His name is Robert, and for 27 years I believed we were happy. We built a home together. We raised two children. We survived years of struggle, laughter, and loss. He was my best friend, or so I thought. It started with little things: a missed dinner, a new cologne, a phone turned face down on the table. When I asked, he always smiled. "You worry too much, Grace," he'd say, touching my hand. "You know I'd never hurt you." And like a fool, I believed him, until one morning a woman called my phone. Her voice was weak, trembling. "Mrs. Parker?" she asked softly. "You don't know me, but I think you should come to St. Mary's Hospital." "Who is this?" I asked. She hesitated, then whispered, "I'm the woman your husband's been visiting every week." My world tilted. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud, angry, frightened. She hung up before I could ask anything else. And that's when something inside me changed. No more waiting, no more pretending. I grabbed my coat, my bag, and my car keys. On the drive there, my hands shook so badly that I had to pull over twice just to breathe. I wasn't sure what I would say when I saw her. Would I scream? Would I cry? Or would I finally see the truth with my own eyes? The truth my husband had hidden for years? When I reached the hospital, the smell of disinfectant and cold air made my stomach turn. I asked the nurse at the desk, "Can you tell me where Miss Evelyn Harris is?" She checked the chart. "Room 214, ma'am. End of the hall on the left." My feet felt like they were carrying a lifetime of betrayal. Each step echoed through the corridor, soft, slow, but heavy. I stopped outside the door and looked through the small window. The blinds were half closed. The room was dimly lit, and there she was, lying in bed, pale and fragile, her hair thin against the pillow. For a second, I couldn't move. This wasn't what I expected. This wasn't the woman I had imagined. Glamorous, smug, powerful. This woman looked broken. I pushed the door open quietly. She turned her head toward me, her lips parting in surprise. "You came," she whispered. I froze in place, my bag slipping from my hand and hitting the floor with a dull thud. For a moment, neither of us spoke, because what I saw in that hospital bed wasn't just a woman who betrayed me. It was something far more complicated and far more painful than I could have ever imagined. I stood there for a long moment, frozen near the door. The sound of my bag hitting the floor still echoed in my ears, but my mind was somewhere else, somewhere between anger and disbelief. The woman lying in the hospital bed looked up at me with tired, glassy eyes. Her face was pale, almost translucent, and the thin blanket covering her frame rose and fell in weak rhythm. "You're Mrs. Parker," she whispered. I nodded slowly, my throat too tight to speak. "Yes," I finally said, my voice trembling. "And you're the woman who—" I couldn't finish the sentence. The word mistress felt like poison on my tongue. But she didn't flinch. She didn't defend herself. Instead, she looked away, tears filling her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "You have every right to hate me." I took a hesitant step closer. "Why did you call me?" She exhaled shakily. "Because I thought you should know the truth before I go." Before I go. The words hit me like a cold wave. "What do you mean?" I asked. She turned her head toward the window. "The cancer spread faster than they expected. The doctors said I have a few weeks left." I felt the room spin. All the anger I had carried on the drive here, all the rehearsed words and questions, they suddenly felt meaningless. I wanted to shout. I wanted to ask why my husband chose her. But instead, I just stood there watching her chest rise and fall with effort. "How long?" I asked softly. "How long have you known him?" Her lips trembled. 3 years. 3 years. 3 years of lies, of smiles, of dinners where he looked me in the eye and told me everything was fine. I sat down in the chair beside her bed. My legs felt weak. She looked surprised that I didn't leave. Why? I asked. Why would you be with a married man? Didn't you know he had a family? Her eyes filled with guilt. I knew. At first, I didn't want to, but he told me things. He said you didn't love him anymore. He said you were distant, that your marriage was cold. I closed my eyes for a moment, pain burning through my chest. That's not true, I whispered. I loved him with everything I had. I know that now, she said weakly. He talked about you all the time, even when he was with me. He said he admired you, that he stayed with you because you were his foundation, but I think he also hated that you saw through him. I looked at her again. Despite everything, she didn't look like the villain I had imagined. She looked like a woman who had made a terrible mistake and was paying the highest price for it. She reached for the drawer beside her bed with trembling fingers and pulled out a folded letter. This is for you, she said. He wrote it weeks ago when I was admitted. He told me to give it to you if he couldn't. My heart stopped. If he couldn't what? Her eyes filled with tears. He was supposed to tell you himself, but the day before he planned to, he was in a car accident. He didn't make it, Mrs. Parker. I froze. My lips parted, but no sound came out. My mind went blank, like the air had been sucked out of the room. What did you say? She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her cheeks. He's gone. I thought you already knew. I shook my head violently. No, no, that can't be true. He was away on business. The police would have called. Her voice broke. He didn't want you to know. He said you deserve peace, not another heartbreak. The world tilted beneath me. I grabbed the edge of the bed, my fingers gripping the blanket. My husband who betrayed me, who lied to me, was dead. And the woman who broke my marriage was the one telling me the truth. I stared at the letter in her hand, unable to move. Part of me wanted to throw it away, to never read his words again. But another part, the one that still remembered the man who used to bring me coffee in bed, who used to hold me when I cried, needed to know. Slowly, I reached out and took it. Her hand was cold, fragile, like paper. Thank you, I whispered. She smiled faintly. Please don't hate him forever, or me. We both made mistakes, but in the end, he only ever loved you. Her eyes began to close, her voice fading to a whisper. Tell him I said goodbye. I sat there holding the letter, watching as the monitors beside her slowed. And in that moment, I realized my journey wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about facing the truth. For a long time, I just sat there staring at the folded letter in my trembling hands. It felt heavier than paper, like it carried the weight of everything I never understood, everything I never wanted to face. The hospital room was silent now. The woman, his mistress, had drifted into sleep. Her breathing was shallow, almost imperceptible. The nurse outside had dimmed the lights, leaving the room washed in soft yellow tones. I unfolded the letter slowly. His handwriting was the same, neat, deliberate, full of control, the same way he had lived his life. It began with my name. My dearest Elaine, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it to tell you myself. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please hear me out. I felt a lump forming in my throat. Every line was like a voice from the past, one I had tried to silence but still remembered. You were my home, Elaine. From the day we met, I knew you were stronger than I could ever be. And that scared me more than I'll ever admit. You built a life of meaning, one rooted in love, truth, and family. I, on the other hand, built mine on pride. I could almost see him, sitting in his office, writing this at night, the lamplight casting that same golden glow I used to love. When I met Anna, I wasn't looking for love. I was running from the shame of being the man who didn't deserve you. She reminded me of the years before I failed you, when life felt simple, but it wasn't love, Elaine, not the way I loved you. My fingers tightened around the paper. For a moment, I couldn't read further. I wanted to scream, to ask him why he didn't stop before it went too far, but I kept reading. I thought I could control everything, that I could carry my guilt quietly and keep both worlds from colliding. But when Anna got sick, I realized how cruel I'd been, not just to you, but to her too. She didn't deserve my lies. Neither of you did. The words blurred through my tears. The day I drove to see you, to tell you everything, was the day of the accident. I never made it home. Maybe that's my punishment. Maybe life has a way of forcing truth out of even the best liars. I stopped there. The pain was unbearable, not because of his betrayal, but because even in his guilt, he sounded like the man I used to love. I could almost hear his voice. Elaine, you were my beginning, and I pray you'll let me be your lesson, not your wound. The last lines were written shakily, the ink smudged in places. Don't hate her. She only ever tried to love a broken man. And don't let this destroy you, Elaine. Take what's left of me and build something beautiful from it. I know you will. You always did. There was no goodbye, just his signature, small, uneven, as if his hand had trembled at the end. I sat there for what felt like hours. The letter lay open in my lap, and for the first time, I wasn't angry anymore. I was empty. I thought about the years we had shared, the laughter, the dinners, the little notes he used to leave on my coffee mug. Had all of that been a lie, or had he simply lost himself along the way? The door creaked open behind me. A nurse stepped in quietly, her expression soft. Ma'am, she said gently, you should go home. It's late, I nodded, folding the letter and placing it inside my purse. As I looked at the woman in the bed one last time, I whispered, you can rest now. I forgive you. Her chest rose and fell once more, just once. And then it stopped. I didn't cry. Not there. Not yet. I simply turned and walked out into the hallway where the lights were too bright and the air smelled too clean for grief. When I reached the elevator, I pressed the button and waited. In the silence, I realized something strange. I didn't feel hatred anymore. What I felt was release, the kind that comes when you stop asking why and start accepting what is. As the elevator doors closed, I whispered under my breath, goodbye, Michael. And for the first time in years, I meant it. When I got home that night, the silence felt different. It wasn't the heavy silence of betrayal anymore. It was the quiet that follows truth, the kind that sits beside you, not to comfort, but to remind you that something is over. I set my purse down on the table, poured myself a glass of water, and stared at my reflection in the kitchen window. The woman looking back at me didn't look broken. She looked tired, but free. The letter was still in my purse. I took it out, unfolded it again, and read the last line over and over. Take what's left of me and build something beautiful from it. It sounded like a promise, or maybe a challenge. The next morning I woke up early. I couldn't sleep much, but I didn't feel restless. There was something I needed to do, something I had avoided for too long. His study had been locked since the funeral. I had told myself I wasn't ready to go in there. Too many memories, too many ghosts. But now I wanted to see what he'd left behind. The key was still hanging on the side hook, just where he used to keep it. When I unlocked the door, the faint smell of his cologne greeted me. Woodsy and faint, but still alive in the air. His desk was neat as always, a stack of papers perfectly aligned. His pen beside the old leather notebook he never went anywhere without. I sat down in his chair, the same one that had creaked under his weight every evening when he worked late. For a moment, I just closed my eyes and listened, imagining the faint scratch of his pen, the sigh he'd let out when he was deep in thought. Then I opened the drawer. Inside, I found another envelope. This one didn't have my name on it, just the words, for her. At first, I thought it was meant for the mistress, but when I looked closer, something about the handwriting felt different, rushed, almost desperate. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a short note and a photograph. The photo was of me, taken years ago at our anniversary dinner. I was laughing, my hand resting on his arm. He wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking at me, and the look in his eyes was love, pure, unguarded love. The note was even simpler. If you ever find this before she does, it means I was too late. This was never meant to hurt you, Elaine. You were always the one I loved. I just lost my way. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear fell onto the photo. It wasn't sadness anymore, it was closure. I looked around the study, the room where he had built his life, his career, and his secrets. Now it was just a room. The guilt, the lies, they no longer had power here. That afternoon, I took a walk. The air outside was crisp, the kind of clean that only comes after rain. I walked past the park where we used to sit on Sundays, past the coffee shop where we had our first fight and our first apology. Everything looked the same, but I wasn't the same woman anymore. When I got home, I called my daughter Lily. We hadn't spoken properly since the funeral. She had been distant, maybe angry, maybe confused about how I was handling everything. When she answered, her voice was cautious. Mom, hi, sweetheart, I said softly. I just wanted to hear your voice. There was a pause. Then she said, Are you okay? I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. I think, for the first time in a long time, I am. We talked for hours about her work, her plans, her new apartment. Not once did we talk about her father. It wasn't avoidance, it was acceptance. We didn't need to reopen wounds that had finally started to heal. That night after dinner, I sat on the couch with a cup of tea. The letter and photo were on the table in front of me. The lamp cast a soft light over them, warm, forgiving. I whispered quietly, You were wrong, Michael. I did build something beautiful, not from what you left, but from what I learned. Because the truth was, I had learned something. Love doesn't always stay pure. People make mistakes, terrible ones. But forgiveness, real forgiveness, isn't about erasing the past. It's about freeing yourself from it. A few weeks later, I donated most of his things to charity. I kept only the photo and the letter. The rest, I let go. One morning, I drove to the coast, the same place where we used to go when life felt heavy. I stood by the water, holding the letter in my hand. The wind was strong that day, tugging gently at my hair as if urging me to let go. So I did. I opened my fingers and watched the paper lift, dance once, and disappear into the sky. It didn't feel like loss. It felt like peace. That evening, when I returned home, Lily called again. Mom, she said, I've been thinking, maybe you could come visit me. Stay a few weeks, I smiled. I'd love that. After we hung up, I walked to the window. The sun was setting, painting the world in shades of gold and pink. I thought of him again, not as the man who broke me, but as the one who reminded me that love in its purest form is never wasted. Even when it ends, it leaves something behind: courage, wisdom, grace. And as I closed the curtains that night, I realized I had finally said my last goodbye. The days that followed were quiet, but not lonely. The kind of quiet that hums softly in the background, peaceful, almost comforting. I had stopped checking my phone for messages that would never come, and I no longer woke up feeling the weight of what had happened. For the first time in years, I could breathe without remembering someone else's shadow. I started spending my mornings in the library near my home. It was small but cozy, with tall wooden shelves and sunlight that poured through the windows like golden silk. There was a corner seat I grew fond of, beside the window where the light hit just right. That's where I began writing again, not about him, not about betrayal or pain, but about life, about love, about letting go, about finding peace in places you never thought to look. One morning, as I was scribbling in my notebook, an elderly man approached my table. He smiled politely. You always write here? I looked up and returned his smile. Most days. He nodded, setting down a book. Then I'll take the chair across. It looks like a lucky corner. It was such a simple exchange, yet something about it felt refreshing, not like love, just kindness. And maybe that's where healing truly begins, in the quiet moments when someone reminds you that life still holds gentle surprises. Weeks passed and my home slowly began to look different. I replaced old photos with new ones, pictures of the ocean, of sunsets, of places I wanted to visit. I bought fresh flowers every Sunday and placed them by the window, and I laughed again, not loudly, but softly, like someone remembering the rhythm of joy. One afternoon, Lily came to visit. She walked in holding a bouquet of tulips and hugged me tightly. "I've missed you, Mom," she said. I smiled. "I've missed me too." She looked around the house, her eyes lingering on the changes, the rearranged furniture, the calm energy. "You've done so much here," she said. "It feels lighter." "I think I finally learned to let go of what didn't belong," I replied. That evening, we cooked dinner together. The sound of sizzling onions, the smell of garlic and herbs, it filled the house with warmth I hadn't felt in years. After we ate, we sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. "Do you ever think about Dad?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "Sometimes. But not with pain anymore. He's a part of the story that made us who we are, both the good and the bad." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I think he'd be proud of you." I smiled gently. "Maybe. But I'm just proud that I finally found peace." Later that night, after she left, I sat alone with a cup of tea. The moonlight spilled across the table, touching the letter I had framed, the one he wrote to me, not as a reminder of heartbreak, but as proof that I survived it, because survival isn't loud, it's not dramatic, it's quiet, like the way morning light slowly fills a dark room. The next morning, I walked to the beach, the same beach where I had once scattered the letter to the wind. The waves were calm, the air soft and cool. I took off my shoes, feeling the sand between my toes, and whispered to the sea, "Thank you for teaching me how to start again." The tide rolled in gently, as if answering me. I stood there for a long time, watching the horizon, and for the first time, I wasn't waiting for anything or anyone. I was simply here, free. As the sun began to rise, I smiled to myself and whispered the final words of my story, words not of sadness, but of truth. Sometimes the person you become after the pain is the person you were always meant to be. I turned back toward home, my steps light, my heart steady, and behind me the ocean kept whispering, carrying away the last traces of what once was, and blessing the woman I had finally become.